Now we look at various sects of black groupings that seem to be gatekeepers to the progress of black people as a whole, who look like they are serving neoliberal policies, who look like they are the ones who are doing the work of big foreign mining companies to keep the people of here not mining and calling them names like Zamazamas, trying to smoke them out as Stilfontein and having no human dignity and the likes, and not understanding why some of these people end up stealing in the towns they operate in. Not because it's fashionable and it's cool, but maybe they didn't get what they could get here, but they're still trying to survive because of structured poverty. And just the concept of black Africans in particular having to fight their own so that they can progress as a people.
Capital divides. And it's anchored in the Milton Friedman's philosophy, which has replaced this philosophy of Ubuntu.
Yes. Friedman and Keynes had different philosophies. You don't.
Oh yes, I mean Keynes, who actually looked at investments and using money and monetary policy as a developmental tool, especially during times of depression.
He was different.
He was different.
He was saying,
in fact, he was actually cheated out of the discussion of the formation of the IMF and the World Bank.
Okay.
Because if he had sat around the table, which he did, but people like those that were there who were given dominance, Keynes had the best instruments for development. He advised Roosevelt around the New Deal. And of course, it was Reagan and others who came in with this rapacious capital. And the Harvard Business School didn't help a lot because they produced things such as the California crisis on electricity. What was that? The company that
Enron.
Enron. Enron is a product of the Harvard training around playing the stocks, the Wall Street. And it played a very clear role in saying, core business. Now, if you take a behemoth like Eskom, and you go and say, what is core business here? Then you end up removing the training that Eskom provided, which was a public service. And that training meant you de-risk private sector in employing people from Eskom. Because once he's an Eskom product, you don't have to ask questions. But when you remove training faculty from Eskom and Transnet and ISCO, you have basically caused those to be eunuchs. And they say you are looking for core business. Core business of Eskom is electricity production. Now, you try and come to Eskom with a lens that looks at only electricity and the cost centers. You'll remove everything that constitutes an ecosystem such as Eskom. And by so doing, you create a eunuch out of Eskom.
Milton Friedman, you linked to Ronald Reagan, and Margaret Thatcher, you're linking John Maynard Keynes to Theodore Roosevelt.
Absolutely.
On the Eskom, while we're here, I've always struggled with these definitions. Maybe you can help me as an educated timer. What is communism? What is socialism? What is capitalism? And the reason I ask this is because you've got a situation where a white Afrikaner government was building institutions for the benefit and development of what they deemed their people. Today, we have a sort of rainbow nation, apparently. And you've got a government that seems to be building, but it doesn't look like it's doing the same. And I wonder if a part of it is because of size. Maybe it's easier to develop a small group of people. Or if it's vision, if it's serving different agendas. Maybe the white Afrikaner government was serving a different agenda to the current, be the British, the American, etc. Because someone speaks about capitalism as an example. I'm a capitalist, free market. But if you look at what they do for their children and what they do for their community, that's not capitalism. They invest funds, they upskill, they educate, they send them abroad, they give them opportunities. But when it's time to do the same for people of a different race, different community, but the same country, it's a different conversation. Completely.
Well, we've touched on a very important point. You see, when Milton Friedman went to China, Deng said, we'll use Chinese markets thinking. And the Chinese market thinking is an ever-normal granary, that nobody can go hungry. In fact, the Chinese greeting is basically, did you eat? So when you greet a Chinese, the question is, did you eat? Because if you didn't eat, then something is terribly wrong and we have to be mobilized into action. Yes. So when you bring culture into these things, they create markets that care.
Unjani, how are you?
How are you?
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So that I can help you
That's
if you're not okay.
Yes, yeah. That's good. That level of interest in humanity is very, very important. Raw market, free market capitalism, fundamentalism, doesn't care about these things.
At all.
Absolutely not. The Afrikaners were socialists for their own community.
Correct.
In 1933, the Carnegie studies were written, and the question of the poor Afrikaner was the question. And they had to deal with it. And when they dealt with that, Afrikaners today, 60% of them, 65% of them, of the Afrikaners at different age groups, are skilled. And they are almost a replica of the skill levels of Korea, South Korea.
That is correct.
Yes.
You're actually 100% correct.
Yes. So then compare that to 18% amongst blacks of skill. I mean, you cannot have 18% of the population skilled and you think you'll achieve better. You won't. That is why I'm talking about intergenerational value. It doesn't exist. And we should have gone to Mohlomi and asked the question, how are we going to create intergenerational value?
I want to emphasize why I fully agree with you with the Afrikaners and the Koreans and link it to what you're saying about Eskom training. People don't know. When you speak to your Oberholzer, who was the COO at Eskom, along with Andre Terete when you're CEO, some of the things they speak about, because these are Afrikaans guys, they understand what was happening during apartheid. Eskom trained artisans and engineers and whatever were amongst the best in the world. To this day, white Afrikaners that were trained in institutions like that, maybe ISCO and the like, are sought after the world. You can go to Dubai, you can go to Asia, you can go anywhere, you will find them because they are a commodity.
They are in high demand. Now we destroyed that architecture and said, now we'll start the CETAs and all these other things. Now I come to you. And I come to you and say, I'll train you in engineering. I'm on the CETA thing, something. I mean, what engineering can I train anyone in? So this whole thing of core business was a fundamental flaw in raw capitalism. In raw capitalist markets. I mean, you need capital to do things. But when you start saying now, we do not know how the money in Eskom gets used, who are the cost drivers in Eskom, and in order to understand it, we have to divide it into three things, regeneration, distribution, and something else. Electricity is a flow. You cannot store it. You don't have a boundary between generation and distribution. It's continuous. Now you have two boards, and a problem arises between those two. As it will.
Yes, because they have different objectives. And if the one is not meeting the objective, the other one suffers, but it's a flow.
So Eskom design under Bail.
Hendrik van der
Bail met three objectives. An economic engineering behemoth that will provide electricity at an affordable price for industry and people.
Cheap was the focus.
Absolutely.